I would like to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves, their connection to the LGBTQ plus community, and their pronouns or anything about this election and their introduction that they would like to share. And I would like to kick this off with Teresa, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa, pronouns she, her, ella. So honored to be here with you. I'm from a deputy coalitions director on the Biden campaign here in Arizona. I have the honor to work with the LGBTQ plus community. And all I could say is that we're fired up and we're ready to go. I just want to do a quick intro. I'm sure we're getting into the weeds of how we can all work together to flip the state. Just again, honored to be here. Thank you.
I'm sorry, maybe that cut out a little bit there. I'm going to go and throw it to David on my left, if you don't mind introducing yourself, please. You're still muted, my friend.
Oh, there we go. Hi, my name is David Boyles, pronouns he, him.
David out with his mic. It looks like he's still muted, please. I think Christiana has master mic, so David, we can hear you this time.
All right, how's that? Okay, cool. My name's David Boyles, pronouns he, him. I'm the co-founder of Drag Story Hour Arizona and Virtual Arizona Pride, and excited to be here.
Welcome. It's an honor to have you here. Lizette, would you introduce yourself, please?
I am the mother of a 13-year-old trans son. I am also part of the Human Rights and Parents for Trans Equality Council, and as well as facilitator for the Southern Arizona Gender Alliance Families Transform. So thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome, welcome. Chris, would you introduce yourself? I can't.
I go by they, them pronouns. I am just a fellow queer that really wants to be in on the conversation and think that everyone has a lot to offer, and it's a great space to listen and hear other people out and also, share opinions as well. So I'm excited to be here.
Welcome, thank you. Danielle, would you please introduce yourself? Okay.
Yes, okay. I'm Danielle. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a member of the trans community. I'm also on the board of Trans Spectrum, and I'm just here to ask questions and find out what's going on with the
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Andrew, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Drew Cronin. I am a pediatrician in Tucson. I do general pediatrics, and I also do transgender medicine for pediatrics. And I'm a gay. I've been an activist since the 80s.
Welcome, sir. It's an honor to have you here with us as well tonight. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you carving out some time in your busy weeks to be able to join us and keep talking about elections, right? It's on everybody's brain. It's everywhere we look. It's on every app that we open. And one of the questions that we have been asking everybody is, this election has been put in historic context as if it's the most historic election in a lot of our life cycles. And we're different generations here represented on this call, which is pretty awesome. And I know for me personally, at 36, this is definitely one of the most historic election cycles that I have ever definitely put work into and seen energy around. And so I would like to open that up first to Teresa, if you don't mind sharing from the campaign standpoint, what does this election feel like as far as all of the other campaigns that Senator Biden or Harris have been a part of?
Thank you for that question. How can I say? We are the most competitive state of battleground states. The future of a new administration runs straight through Arizona, and that's not lost on us. And it's also not lost on the phenomenal LGBTQ constituency that we're in community with. That also means that we're working our asses off. And from here till election day, we're going to do all the things we can to drive out our community and the people that we love in solidarity, because everything's on the line. We just had a new Supreme Court justice sworn in the darkness of night, and we know what that means. And so it's all on the line. And we're going to work and this is like why I have a shitty reception right now. I'm like, you could fight. I'm on the street. I am working. I'm getting out the vote. Because every vote will count. Every vote will count. The margins will be very, very small in Arizona. Don't fall victim to what the polls are saying. Some polls has us up by 10 points. Don't assume that. We have to work like we're behind, and that's not lost on our campaign. And we're out here fighting for the communities that we love, and among the many, it's this community, the queer community, and we got to do all the things, all the things. So that's where we're at right now.
And it's true, like we have so much experience from the 2016 election and how those polls went right before, and we got a little too comfortable with what numbers looked and felt like. And so I appreciate that final push, like we still have to work like we're behind on things. So thank you, Teresa. Danielle, would you mind sharing with us as far as what you feel like this election is like? Is it a historic election of your lifetime, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm 52, and this is definitely the most consequential election that I've ever seen, certainly in my lifetime. There's so much at stake, specifically for the LGBT community, but for everyone, really. Immigrants, people of color, just everyone. It is not a straight white nation of only males, and I think that needs to be heard. So I think it's just it's crazy how far we've come in only 4 years on that slippery slope. So.
Being now stacked in a direction that's not in our favor, it's definitely a bigger context. Thank you. What about you, Lizette? In the context of your generation or in your voting lifetime, where does this election lay for you?
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself again. This is a really important election. I think this is the first time that people can, I think in other elections, people were still able to separate policy from the human beings that it impacts, right? And I think that a majority of allies and voters are starting to realize the real ways in which policy infringes on people's rights and further marginalizes them. And so this is a really, really important election. I think there's a lot on the line for so many communities. And I think we've seen this administration do things that we thought were impossible as Americans, right? We've never had a president, this type of president, right? That's willing to break laws and break norms and harm people, actively harm people. And so that isn't lost on a lot of people. People to vote. I will say that just on a personal note, my child came out in 2015 when he was 8, and it was a very stressful 4 years because there's been a lot of us that have been fighting for 4 years to stop a lot of the things that this administration has tried to push. And so I'm deeply grateful for the activists who have been on the ground since 2016, pushing and staying vigilant and making sure that this administration didn't push farther than it actually tried to, right? So thank you to lawyers, activists, community members, everyone's willing to do that work for so long. And I think we're all hit all of exhaustion. So come November 3rd, 4th, 5th, get a chance to take a break.
A little break, yes. And then there's still going to be lots of work to do to get all of these incoming folks ready. But yes, wonderful points, Lisette. Thank you for bringing that up, and especially talking about how your family has that generational divide and what that experience looks like. David, would you mind explaining a little bit about what this election looks like for you as far as its historical context?
Yeah, and in terms of the historical context and talking about our ages here, I'm 39, so the first presidential election I voted in was 2000. The last time the Supreme Court, just installed a Republican president, and it's really scary to be, seeing that is just openly their strategy this time is to, create chaos and then have the Supreme Court install a handpicked president again. So yeah, it's very important that we have not only a victory, but a very decisive victory to prevent that from happening. But on the other hand, I'm also old enough to remember when a Democratic president signed the Defense of Marriage Act. We have come a long way, in the Democratic Party embracing the LGBT community, and it not just being, that the Democrats are not actively attacking the community as opposed to the Republicans, but actually supporting them. And we have a campaign platform now that is inclusive of trans people, where things like marriage equality, which were still controversial 12 years ago, are now just accepted as part of the platform. So that part is very exciting, that we have a administration that might actually sign the Equality Act, actually have federal protection for LGBT people for the first time ever. So, there's a lot, to look forward to if we are able to, win this election in 5 days.
Because we need that reminder that we've seen things like this before, and obviously not to these extremes like Lisette mentioned, but definitely needed that. Andrew or Drew, would you mind sharing with us about what this looks like for you and your generation as far as historical elections go?
Oh no, I'm out of my generation now. I would say, so one of the things I look at here, I am tired of part of history. And all of us are tired of being part of history. The kids I take care of who are transgender, they just want to be kids. I remember when I was younger, hearing the whole fights over the Boy Scouts, marriage, and the military for gay people, and that's all settled now. But that again was part of just being exist. And one of the I'm going to relax on November 4th and maybe the 5th, but we're going to have to keep fighting, because one of the things is, no matter what with this election, we have seen how quickly our rights can be taken away after a new person is elected. And if we look at the whole ACA and the sections that protected transgender people in medical settings and the rules that have happened there, it's disgusting, and it happened so quickly. And next, we're going to make it permanent.
Thank you so much for that. And we are all part of our generations. That's, to all of us going through this. I mean, I just recently got asked to help out with elder LGBTQ things. So yes, we are all growing through these lovely adapting changes in our community. Last but not least, Chris, please tell us what this looks like for your generation as far as historical election cycles go.
Yeah, so I am 31, and I think, I don't know, from my perspective, I think that it's pretty like, it's been pretty eye-opening in a lot of ways that I felt I was informed on that I'm not informed on. And it seems to me to be that I think that this administration has revealed a lot of like human rights violations that are leaning a lot towards authoritarianism, and they are mirroring other leaderships and countries that have authoritarian leaders that have been committing human rights violations for so long. And I think that that's the eye-opening part to me, is that I knew that there were human rights violations going on. I'm part of a group that is considered othered, and I think it's really important to recognize those like trends. I think it's like, for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not see all of the magnitude of this? But I think it's important to recognize those trends, because it could very easily and quickly change, as it has. As Drew was saying, things have changed very quickly. Like, on a day, I just like wake up one day and I'm like, oh, cool, I guess trans people can be just rejected from doctors. I guess no doctor for me. Like, that's 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 a push towards a really authoritarianism like way of running things, and like really putting any sort of like othered group into a really harmful space incredibly quickly. So it's been very eye-opening, and I know it's important, and I know that voting has always been important, but it feels pretty important this time around. Like, truly.
Really, really. No, I get it. That's what it is. It's like, we said 2016 was super important. And then we said, 2008 was really important. So we have these, importance. And then this one is just like, no, really, really, we're at this level now, or this needs to matter. We do have a few folks in the chat room as well. And so when we were talking about polls earlier, we have Aaron in the chat saying he pays no heed to polls. He already voted and never vote according to polls. And so I think that's just, we need to know what our history is, but we always, the data is subjective sometimes, right? The next question that I want to pose to Teresa to answer first is, why do you feel that Arizonans need to be active voters? I know you touched a little bit earlier about how you feel like we are just going to have some close margins and some deciding factors here, but why do you feel specifically Arizona voters need to be getting out there and doing their part this year?
That's a great question. Basically, there's no way to get to 270 without a state like Arizona. We have to create the margins of victory here in the state, because nothing is guaranteed. We have states like Pennsylvania that we're very uncertain with, Michigan, Wisconsin, some of the people that, for the long time, the Democratic establishment has been leaning on to deliver. And what is exciting about a place like Arizona is that we're no longer this dream. Like, we can deliver. We have showed that we can do this. And what I wish for us is that we can show the Democratic machine that we can deliver, and that we should always be in play. And that's what I want to show, because there's certain places in this country that I think that we are bending our policies, and we're like trying to like still like capture, and maybe it's not capturable. I don't know. So we got to just do what we can, and it's all possible here in Arizona.
Absolutely. I feel like we are going to be a decision maker in a lot of ways, or we are going to be an eye opener in a lot of ways here in Arizona. I know for a long time, folks have had their fingers crossed for us to go purple, but I really feel we can actually have the opportunity to go blue. And I know folks have certainly been doing the work for it this year. So thank you for that. I want to ask.
It's not a dream anymore. We could do this.
No, it's attainable, and there's enough folks doing the work that there's enough opportunity for folks to do the work that is. One of the things that I guess I want to pose to our community members is, what do you feel like Arizona needs help with or needs to have a bigger focus on from the Biden campaign while you have a person who can have that direct communication? What do you feel like national needs to know about us here locally, whether that's in your community and neighborhood, whether that's with your specific family or within your home, your own body? I would like to give you this opportunity to connect with the Biden campaign and let them know locally what's important to you. And so, Chris, you were one of our last folks to get to answer last time. I would like for you to start first, please.
There we go. Got it. Yeah, so I kind of like trailing off of what I was saying before, I think one of the things that's really important is immigration and ICE and people seeking asylum. Growing up in Yuma, Arizona, it's a border town. And my mom was born in Mexico and came here with her 4 other siblings and mom and dad, and they brought all of them here legally, and it was quite the process. I hear a lot of stories. It's not easy. So I know that if people are seeking asylum from really like what I was saying before, like places where leaders are authoritarian and they're committing a lot of human rights violations, I think that it's kind of easy to be like, well, I don't really see it here right now, so it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. I would say that it can and it has gotten really bad really quickly, and it reminds me, in my opinion, I think it mirrors what is happening in China with Uyghurs, and it's also been compared to concentration camps. And I know that sounds really extreme, but like I said before, when people are othered, things can get really bad really, really quickly. And I think that there's policies that I know Joe Biden has said that he made a mistake. And I appreciate that admission with immigration, because I do think it was a mistake. And I think it made it a lot easier for this administration to do things like separate kids from their parents and just commit a lot of human rights violations that are tragedies. So that's really one of the first things that comes to mind, because I feel like it's close to my heart. But yeah, that, I guess I would want to know, like, what actionable things are going to happen. Like, what can we expect to see? Not just like promises and, hey, I made a mistake. Because while the admission is nice, like, I want to know that these people can actually seek asylum when they need it. And I want to know that people are going to be safe. And this is still a place where people can come to really like build a dream for themselves and their families.
Thank you so much for sharing that very deeply personal answer. Teresa, do you have any comments about what the platform feels about immigration or what their plans are here locally with that?
Thank you for that question. I think that I'll speak for myself personally. I'm in this fight because I care about that too. And I think it's pretty clear who it doesn't matter to. And I think that we're all fighting for this because we see humanity in immigrants and those that the system has not worked for. So, I mean, I won't bore you with what the platform is, because one can just like go to the website and like see it. But I mean, part of the 100-day plan of a Biden administration is finding pathways and reinstating DACA and etc. But I think that what you need to walk away with is that we see humanity in people, and that's completely rooted in what we do.
Very much so. And I appreciate that so much from this campaign, because it's very obvious that this current president is not rooted in humanity. And so it's just refreshing still in 2020 to have a candidate who can center that. So thank you, Teresa. I would like to ask Drew if you would like to share something that you feel locally is important to connect to the national campaign.
I'd like to, first of all, thank you so much for that last question and answer. I actually saw a 2-year-old child with a foster parent this week because he had been separated from his mother from Guatemala, and she's in an ICE facility right now. And we don't even know, this kid's not talking. We don't even know if we're speaking a language he speaks, because he doesn't necessarily speak Spanish coming from Guatemala. And so I feel like on the border is just so important. I'm going to say in terms of healthcare and building on the ACA, there are two. I mean, I love us to have a universal health care and Medicare for all. That's not what won the election. But what I would like to make sure of is I hear a lot from my friends who run small businesses who are very, very rural, and it is really hard for them to vote for something that has driven their insurance costs through the roof. Because the way it was set up, we only have one plan in Pima County, and that cannot be allowed to continue. Number two, as a physician, I can tell you I know a lot of very liberal physicians who it's hard for them to support because the administrative part of the ACA is horrendous. It is developed, there's an entire new industry in medicine now to deal with all the paperwork that came up. And I really hope some of this stuff gets fixed, because if we can fix it, we will get all of those people solidly on our sides again.
Thank you so much for just connecting. And Chris's question, hearing about healthcare, you're right. It's not something that we selected as far as universal healthcare, and that was something that was important to a lot of folks, especially here in this state. And so, Teresa, if you have a comment on it, I know that that's a topic that we could delve into very deeply. But if you wanted to touch base on that, other than platform issues, you're welcome to.
We want to get people covered. I mean, that's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we believe that healthcare is a human right, and that's not lost on us. Again, this is what we're fighting for.
Thank you so much. Danielle, would you mind sharing about a local issue that you feel is important to you, your family, or happening around you?
Sure. Can you hear me better now? I've got my headset on instead. Okay, awesome. I read that we are planning on the first 100 days implementing the Equality Act, which is great. But I want to go a step beyond that, because if we don't win the Senate, then the chances of that actually getting through the entire Congress are very slim. So what are the plans if we can't pass the Equality Act? What do we do beyond that? Like, what's the next step? What are the plans to, I guess, just open-ended? If we can't do that, then what are the next steps beyond actually getting that implemented?
That's an awesome question. I know that Equality Arizona has a lot of anticipated action items, so definitely stay plugged into what we are going to be doing. But Teresa, if you have some points that you wanted to share about that, we would love to hear those too.
I don't have anything on the official side that I can share, but those are real political calculations that we have to be thinking about. I'm gonna speak as Teresa, who has done Latino advocacy in DC, who has worked on the Hill and has known what it's like to have a divided executive and Congress. There's other Democratic levers that we can pull. Part of it is executive orders. So those are the things that we need to be thinking about. But something that's not lost, at least on the campaign, is what governance looks like right now. Especially because things are so stacked. I mean, look what just happened in the judiciary. Like, that's real. And I'm not going to sugarcoat what that looks like. Again, as me, the individual Teresa, who's with you, concerned about our future, that's where we're at right now. But I mean, there's other Democratic levers that we can be pulling, and that we've seen other administrations. I mean, the Obama administration did a lot of good through executive orders, and so those are along the lines that we should be thinking about.
Excellent. Thank you. Because I totally always forget about executive orders. I think maybe because this president has just ruined the thought of executive orders for me, but I always forget that that's like a legitimate path with a legitimate president. And so Lisette, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us something about local politics or an issue that's here in Arizona for you or your family that you'd like to connect in with our national representative.
So I'm a daughter of the Southwest, born and raised. Not a lot of us. I mean, most people are transplants to Arizona. I grew up 45 minutes away from the border. I'm first generation. I went to the U of A. I was first in my family. My husband is an immigrant. But I think not just that, and I have a trans child, not just that, like Arizona is actually a very diverse and beautiful state. I have a deep love for my state, even though it's red. And I think that our values and who we are is beautiful and vast, and I think we get forgotten because there's a strong voting bloc that's a minority that tends to win out. And the reason they win out is because there's not enough information given to our nanas, our tias, our tios, our cousins. Like, you need to be informing people, not the year before an election. We need to like actively inform voters of what things mean. I'm really tired of people just talking about Roe v. Wade and the minimal, it's a huge implication. Of course, I want my body, my choice. It's my right to my body. But this case was actually one on privacy. It's tied to 123 other cases that give rights to a lot of marginalized people. Drew could speak on this, right? And so we're talking about equality, like gay LGBTQIA rights, women's rights, the rights to a bank account, to own property. And the thing is that the other side has always been very effective at communicating what they want their message to be, right? They want a theocracy. We're really worried about, everyone keeps talking about an authoritarian regime, but the reality is that right now, the way things are going, it's a theocracy. And so what does that do? It eliminates the rights and the visibility of those who do not fall within that way of believing, right? And so we need to be informing our Catholic family members. We need to be informing our immigrant, my husband can vote this year. I've had a lot of time to inform him and my family members how to be equality voters. And so we need the teams on the ground, like we're volunteers and running ragged. We need actual ways in which our politicians speak clearly and speak fully about the ways in which these laws protect them and how it expands past just the way, like how it expands past the small kind of explanation that's given around these larger issues. It's nuanced and it's complex, and we don't move past that, right? We are very singular in the way we talk about it, and our messaging is off. And so I think that Arizona is important. I think that there needs to be more conversations around how we're going to change the misinformation that's being disseminated and has been disseminated for years now.
And I think that's definitely part of this 2020 like rebranding of everything. We're having conversations in a new way. We're delivering information in new ways. And so I feel like people have to move beyond just the here's your blurb, right? We need to get more into those nuances. Absolutely. And I feel like Arizona has definitely been given some attention from this campaign, Teresa. And I guess maybe a question to kind of help with what Lisette was saying is, what are the plans beyond Election Day for this campaign to continue investing in Arizona to ensure that we still have this attention beyond next week?
Sure. Beyond next week is when the next phase of the work begins. People think that we wrap it up and that, we're going to live this fairy tale like life after that. No, the real work, the governing part, and it's for Arizona and it's for the rest of the country. We are tasked with undoing so much damage of this administration, and the work is real. It's going to take all of us. Yes, definitely the government layer, but it's us, the citizens, to hold government and all of those that contribute and have a say accountable. It's gonna start, and it should not be lost on any of us. And We should not. I know that even getting us to this point has been a really long journey, but the work begins. The work begins.
Absolutely. And Caleb in our chat shares it's so important to fight for those before us, those of us here now, and those who will carry on after us. And so I feel like that just tied right in with these comments here. Last but certainly not least, Dave, would you mind sharing with us something that you feel is important to you here locally that you want to make sure gets highlighted for our national rep?
Yeah, I think, all of these are, super important issues, here locally. But one thing that's, near and dear to my heart, I'm a teacher, I work with LGBT youth, and, we need schools that are, safe and inclusive for our LGBT students. And, we all know Betsy DeVos, and it's very easy for Democrats to beat up on Betsy DeVos and then pretend that Arne Duncan didn't happen, who was Obama's Secretary of Education, who promoted charter schools, promoted this privatization plan, which allowed growth here in Arizona of these charter school chains like ALA, Benjamin Franklin, which have not only robbed our public schools of hundreds of millions of dollars, but are allowed to openly discriminate against LGBT students, are allowed to teach theocratic, white supremacist, anti-LGBT curriculum in their schools. So we need a Secretary of Education who actually cares about actual public schools and actual inclusive, safe schools. So that's one thing that I care about, and that here in Arizona has been kind of the number one issue for the last few years.
Levels in Arizona struggle. I mean, at the university level, K through 12, we struggle in many, many areas as far as education, as far as paying our teachers accordingly and resources. And so what are the administration's plans to hopefully get a person in this position that currently DeVos holds, that a qualified person in this position, rather? What are the plans for that? That would be for you, Teresa.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Yes. Oh no, it looks like we might be losing you. So we're going to give you a moment to hopefully see if your connection will come right back in. Just give me a good wait.
All right.
There you are. I hear
We're
you.
back on.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I think the question had to do with public education. I think that, and I apologize, I don't know why my camera just cut out right now. I think that there's not, I mean, in this race, there's not a candidate that believes in public education more than Vice President Biden. And I think that your concerns are absolutely legitimate. They're absolutely real. Again, this is the fight that has to continue beyond in the governing part of the next wave. The first battle is to win this. The next battle is to make sure that we are proposing the right policies for this country. And I hear your concern, and that's legitimate. And that's exactly what we're fighting for, even the chance to be able to right those wrongs in the future.
Thank you so much, Teresa. We have a little bit more time left to ask a couple more questions. And so I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to kind of give your temperature check, I guess, of where we're at with this election. It's been a very divisive election. It has its ups and downs as far as it's been a record-breaking voting year. And so there's been some things that I've been asking during these roundtables. And one of these questions is, there's one point of this campaign or part of this election cycle that you're over, that you wish you just could not have to deal with any longer, or what's been that negative sore spot, versus what's something about this election cycle that's given you some hope, or that's been positive, or that you've been able to see some type of, difference in from previous elections. And so it's kind of like that pendulum of something that you're over versus something that you're hopeful or inspired by about this election. And I would like to give the first person, let's see, Lizette, would you start us off with that, please?
I would say that I see a lot more allyship, and I see a lot more people speaking up regarding social justice issues, and that is making me hopeful. 4 or 5 years when I began talking to friends and family about what we were experiencing and that we had a transgender child, there was a lot of hesitation to show support and a lot of hesitation around trans issues. And so I am feeling hopeful because I'm starting to see people stand up for my child and other people like him and actually put themselves out there and speak on what they value and what they do in their communities. And so that keeps me hopeful because it means that, you know, we're creating a better, safer world for kids like him. So.
Is there something on that other side of the pendulum that you wanted to share about, or you just want to share the hopeful stuff and that's okay too? And that's okay. Thank you so much. I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with this new platform, so I appreciate everybody bearing with us. Chris, would you mind sharing something about this election cycle as far as the pendulum, something that maybe you're over or something that inspires you or keeps you hopeful?
Yeah, I think that the part that I'm most over is just misinformation and people really relying on social media as a news source. It's really infuriating sometimes. It was such a net negative to me that I just got off of social media completely, and it's become a lot more helpful for me to seek out those news sources and truly find ones that are, I mean, there's no unbiased news source ever, but you know, ones that are somewhere in the middle that make it a point to hold conversations so you can hear both sides, even though I may not agree. I think it's still important to hear and not from, you know, anonymous person on the other side of a screen that is just saying, I don't know, whatever makes them angry that day, I guess. But on the hopeful side, I would say that I'm hopeful that people will stay engaged and care because it's pretty easy. I know that Louisa and I had a conversation about this the other day. It's pretty easy to not really care about things once the election is over because you're not personally being affected. And so things like I think just having like conversations with people that have had those experiences or currently experiencing those types of things really makes a difference, even if it's with somebody that doesn't have the same point of view as you. If it's like one that you may disagree with, I think that I'm hopeful that people will learn to listen more. So the divisiveness can hopefully, you know, people can start coming together a little bit more and at least be respectful, even if they don't agree with the person that they're talking with, because it's truly about their personal experiences that really brought them to that point of view. And it's hard to understand other people's experiences when they're not yours. So I'm hopeful that conversations will happen rather than just like bickering and yelling.
I think a lot of us are hopeful for that. So yes, thank you for sharing that. What about you, Drew? What are the two parts of the pendulum that you're feeling with this election cycle right now?
So something that I'm over is I don't know how to word this correctly, but I'm going to go for it, is the Republicans who just discovered that Donald Trump is a bad person. Where were y'all the last 4 years? Where were you during the 2016 election? And please, that you are going to be part of the cabinet and anything like that, George. And I mean, the day after the election, they don't person, but they do like vacancies. And they're going to start working to find someone. They just have to stop. Yes, I'm so glad you're voting with us now. I'm glad you're on our team. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, all that, but they're testing too much. In terms of things that I am really excited about, my best friend is an organizer in Texas, and the explosion of the youth vote there is just incredible. And I have to say the same thing here. I have kids who I see who I don't know anything about their politics or how involved they are. And I'll mention something. I'm like, oh, and they'll say, oh, yeah, I helped to organize a group of my friends for that whole TikTok thing. And yeah, we've all voted. We've gotten all of our friends to vote. And I know every year that there's an election, we say, I hope the youth wakes up. I think the youth vote is wide awake. And I think groups like the Sunrise Movement are really helping. It's exciting. It's really exciting to hear people talk about ideas that when I was a youth, we didn't even consider. And I am really excited about one other thing. This will be the second time I'm voting for a woman for vice president. That tells you my
We appreciate you being here and sharing that answer. Thank you, Drew. What about you, David? What are your pendulums look like right now for the election as far as something you're over and something that maybe you're hopeful or inspired by?
Yeah, and actually, I mean, mine both, building off what Drew said, both have to do with voting. I don't know, both ends. The inspiring thing definitely has been seeing people, realizing, how important their right to vote is and waking up to that, largely in response to the attempts at voter suppression on the other side. And, that has definitely been the downside part, is that we are now in an era where, the right to vote has become a partisan issue. Republicans realize that the fewer people vote, the more they can suppress votes, the better it is for them politically. And Democrats, realize that, helping people vote, is going to benefit them. And, we are, I think, 4 years ago, I don't think people really realized how important and significant it was that was the first presidential election after Shelby County. And I think we've become much more aware of Shelby County and how important that was. And people are in Texas is the prime example of people rebelling against these attempts to suppress their votes, which is great. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I worry about going forward. Especially with the Supreme Court as it is now. And since we have someone from the Biden campaign, I won't go further into that and bring up, what we should do about that, because I think that would make Biden campaigners' heads explode right now. So we won't get into that. But yeah, people realizing how precious and how easily it is to take away their right to vote, and rebelling against that. Hopefully that will continue, because without that, things get real dark real quick.
Agreed. There's been a lot of that rebel energy that's just been kind of balancing the force lately. So I appreciate you sharing. And certainly, last but not least, Danielle, would you mind sharing what your pendulum looks like as far as this election year right now?
Yeah. So one thing that I'm truly really over, and it's not really over, but I'm over it and hoping that we move on from it, is cloaking the ability to take advantage of others and the freedom to do that under the guise of freedom for everyone. So things like the medical industry and insurance and all those things is, it's capitalism in general, I guess, is really just taking advantage, capitalizing on other people. And so I think that needs to be minimized in the future. And the hopeful piece is I think that the younger generation sees that because it's gotten so bad at this point that they are kind of waking up and realizing that that if we let it go on, that we're going to have another let them eat cake kind of moment, at some point. So I'm hopeful that it won't go won't go that direction, but it really is truly getting to that point. The disparity in economics is horrible. So yeah, I'm over the taking advantage of other people thing.
Thank you for sharing that. And we're not the only folks experiencing that. I know that there's been some uprising recently in some South American countries as far as people revolting with their government and just being absolutely over like the complacency and just over it. And so I feel like we do have this rebel spirit about 2020 that is like, nope, we're not just going to settle for things. So thank you all. I want to give Teresa the opportunity. Is there, something that you would like to vent about this particular election cycle as far as something that you're ready to be done and over with by next week? And what is something that's brought you hope along this election trail this year?
I think I'll speak as like Teresa, me, a believer in our democracy and our country and people. I am pretty damn done with the assault and just our democracy. I'm pretty, I shouldn't wake up to a tweet from the Judiciary Dems saying, announcing that we have a new justice and oh, happy birthday, Secretary. Oh, they didn't even use Secretary Hillary Clinton, and it's just like, they couldn't be more overt of the fact that they don't care to govern. They don't care about us. They don't care about this country. It's just about winning, and to what end and to what they use that power is really nefarious, and we know this. But what I'm hopeful, and I'm going to echo a lot of what's been said. My day job, I work at a university and I work with young people, and when I hear them speak about the democracy that they're reimagining, it is so amazing. It is so powerful, and I'm here to fight for that vision. That's it.
I appreciate that passion still at this point of the election cycle. So thank you so much. We have just a few more minutes before we have to wrap things up. So Teresa, I want to give you an opportunity to any undecided voters that are watching this evening or folks that still have yet to turn in their ballots. What would you like to give one last piece of information to voters before they turn in their ballots next week?
Thank you for the opportunity. For anyone who is still undecided, I think that I just ask you to look at what our current situation is. Are we better today than we could be to like recapture and like reclaim something that they've been saying? Can we reimagine a better future? We should not be living in the middle of a pandemic. We should not be living in the worst economic situation. And the economy is not the stock market for a lot of us. Definitely for the people that I love in my community and my family. Please, we cannot win this. This is about every single voter in the state. Have a conversation with your neighbors. Have a conversation with your family. Every single vote will count. The margin of victory for us is very, very small. It's going to take all of us to do everything that we can. And we have to send a message. We have to send a message for those that allowed this to happen. We shouldn't be living in a country that allows 200,000 plus people that die. Not in this country. Even my parents who are Mexican immigrants, they never saw it in their home country. We're living in truly dystopic times. Let's change it. This is not what we deserve. This is not what our future deserves. We need you. We need you. We need you. We can't do this without you. Please, please, please make your voice heard. Drop your ballot. You can still drop it in a drop-in ballot. Visit iwillvote.com/AZ to find where you can do that. And then, of course, you can vote on actual election day. But we really encourage you to vote early if possible. We can't do this without you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for that passionate plea for voters. I appreciate it. I want to give our panelists one more opportunity to say a little something before we go. So maybe a popcorn, like one word answer. If you could sum up one word of how you're feeling about next Tuesday, what would that word be? And I'm going to start with, let's see, Drew, would you start with what would your one word be?
Hopeful. I'll finally let myself hope.
Lizette, what would your one word be?
It's going to be 2 words. Remember that we're not alone. Community matters.
I love it. Unity matters. What about you, Chris? What would your word be?
It's not a word. It's not a word. It's more of a. That's how I feel about it.
I did onomatopoeia, so that feels just about. Yes. What about you, Danielle? What would yours be?
Anxiety is my one word.
Fair enough, and that's okay. You're not the only one, I am sure. What about you, David? What would yours be?
Full as well.
Excellent, excellent. And Teresa, do you have a word that you feel like you'd like to leave us on for this?
I'm gonna take the liberty and I just do one word. But we're doing this together. We're building this together. I mean, if I could tell you just like the hope that I see in people's eyes and in their voices every day. I mean, we're literally the last stand for our democracy. Like, this is what it comes down to. I'm hopeful, but I'm taking nothing for granted, and I'm going to work my ass off till we cross the finish line.
Yes, yes, yes. I am grateful for each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much, Teresa, from Arizona Biden Campaign. Thank you to every one of our panelists for joining us this evening. I am you will all have to take time out. In case there is any undecided voters out there, I would like you to know that we have an amazing voter guide at equalityarizona.org/vote. If you need help still filling out that ballot, like Teresa mentioned, you have until Tuesday to drop that off, but do it early. Get your ballots in because every single vote counts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of my panelists tonight. If you'd like to say your final goodbyes and waves to each other before we close out, I'm just so glad you all are here. Thank you, Caleb and Aaron, in our comment section for joining us as well. Have a good night from all of us here in Arizona.